Hello, ActiveSage here on the Sage channel. I'm going to be doing something a little bit different today. You might have noticed that the other guys had a build-off maybe on their channels, and I didn't, and this was from about last week. Well, as it turns out, a lot of my footage from that got a bit funky. To be more exact, Shadowplay decided to do itself in with a big old fecal bath, and yeah, I had some trouble with all of that. So instead of digging through its footage and trying to piece it back together and all that nonsense that I've run into, I'm just going to go ahead and show some of the stuff that happened from it that I do have footage of, I believe, and talk over it, as well as show off this beautiful station I put together, which I was actually quite proud of, as well as the lander that I built. The other guy's lander I might do a very quick look at, but I suggest you watch their videos to mainly see their landers in all their glory, or lack thereof. Okay, so let's start out with this station here. I built it specifically for this wonderful build-off of ours. I had the large opening here that symbolized the opening of the mothership. The idea that it would be you'd fly in and out of that to prove that you could do it. All of us could. It took a while once we were in space, but we all did manage to do so. Over here we had a platform 1, 2, which Aaron got rid of the number, and 3, which you can barely see under the Medusa. And on each of these platforms, because I was originally planning for us to be building in creative mode, or at least in creative mode using the Space Master tools, I actually had a small medical base stuck down into the platform here, which Scott actually made clever use of in making it sort of a maintenance area so he could actually get under his ship to do, well, silly Scott designs. You can see it right here a bit clearer that you have the cut in. So if you died as well, you could respawn there, and of course you could use it to get more hydrogen and oxygen and all that, because you probably noticed the big pipes that do shoot out around the whole station. They actually connected into these large setup here, which I actually filled with ice, which we have, you know, 1,000,000,001 hydrogen or oxygen generators, as I believe they're called, even though they make oxygen and hydrogen. And inside we did have a large cargo container that you can't really see that was full of more ice. And I had all my beautiful, beautiful hydrogen tanks sitting out here. So if people need hydrogen, they could actually fill up from these, which is the reason why Scott has this weird arm thing we put together to try to allow him to hook up, which still didn't really work. Over here, we got the main support pylon. Actually, if you disconnect anything from this, it's all going to fall, because we do have station voxel support set up. So if you can disconnect it from an asteroid, it falls. So in the very center of this, we actually have a little tiny dinky asteroid I spawned in and stuck in there. I built everything off of that. We have our rover, which was our objective to be picked up, sitting right here, nice and pretty, so you can copy that over if you need to get a size. Here is our reactor pylon, where it's just full of tons and tons of reactors. If I was to fly down here, you can see reactors. Yay! Fantastic! I actually love the way that looks. Of course, people will probably say it reminds them of the Cylon respawn ship. Guess that might be subconsciously where I got my inspiration. I love it so. And yeah, then we have this area here, which was like the enclosed respawn area. If you just needed a safe spot to spawn in, we actually had a little area here so you could access any of the cargo stuffs. And we had all of our fantastical doors, which I believe I used these submarine doors to seal this place off. Yes, because I love the way those things look. They just make everything so nice and industrial. Alrighty. Oh, also, if I turn on my UI, you'll notice that all these beacons aren't showing up like crazy, which is something beacons often do. If you own a beacon, even if its range is set to 0, you'll find that if it's connected to a platform with an antenna, you'll often end up seeing it anyway. So all those beacons are actually not owned by anybody. They're all set to be owned by nobody. That way they wouldn't show up. Alrighty, there was the station tour. We do have an antenna down here, by the way. That way we could keep track of it. Let's go ahead and really quickly, let me mouse scroll wheel forward while in spectator to speed ourselves up, and then scroll wheel back down to slow ourselves back down to the landing area on the planet. And we got 4 little pylons, which was, you know, sort of like the other landers video we did. The idea was we landed between those. I didn't really tell anybody that. I just sort of assumed they would assume, and so nobody did. They mostly ended up trying to land either here or out here, just in the open area. Whoopsie-doo landy. I also had a respawn point sitting up here, which, of course, when we did actually do the landings, we switched over to survival mode and just used Space Master. That way people would actually have to worry about their hydrogen depleting. Turns out having a raised platform is a little bit dangerous when you could run out of hydrogen fuel in your jetpack in 2 seconds. We also had our vehicle in here, which originally had wheels, but by the time we came down here to actually start building, for some reason its wheels had just vanished. And I also found out that if we were to go ahead and try to put more rovers in, at that time, whenever you spawn a rover in, if it would let me, Okay, it's not letting me now, but the issue we found was that whenever you spawn a rover in, the wheel simply exploded. Can't test it now because apparently copy and paste is disabled, or at least for some reason not currently working. Anyway, that's our little area there. We also had the lighting drone. I should point out that when Scott got his ship down here, it took him, as per usual, about 15 minutes to get things adjacent. He also hopped out of his ship, even though I was attempting to warn him not to, because his cockpit was too high up, and he couldn't get back in the bloody thing, which meant, well, after literally about 15-20 minutes of us trying to find alternative solutions, I finally took this little dandy lighting drone right here, and stuck a platform on it, which promptly killed him.
What's the worst that can happen?
Well, was it?
It just killed me.
Okay, here we go.
Oh, bollocks.
Woo!
That doesn't work very well, does it?
Fuck it.
So much for getting lift. Is it the thruster? What is it?
I flew your body up too. And then, of course, we finally gave up and just stuck a seat on the bloody thing and got him up there that way, which worked reasonably well. Aaron's ship, I should say, when he did his, because I believe I have some footage of that hasn't gone wonky, it was, well, not as agonizing as Scott's, but his first attempt did end prematurely when, for some odd reason, well...
What?
Okay, kicking in.
I can start see buildings now.
Whoa!
What?
You have a structural failure, my friend. That is a serious structural failure.
Houston, we have a problem.
Oh my god,
That
what even happened?
is
Did it hit a cloud?
massive structural failure.
Hit a cloud?
Oh god, Aaron! Oh, you bounced off a tree. Your ship might still function.
What's going?
Oh, what?
I've lost his ship.
I've suspended.
It looks
Where's
like
his
you
ship?
just jumped out. Your ship's coming down.
Oh,
Oh!
there it is.
What the hell happened?
Well, your ship had plenty of ice.
What the frack? His engines all exploded. We think it's maybe because he shut off his whole ship and turned it back on, which caused maybe all the pistons to reset, and maybe his thrusters to give a little boost. Either way, all of his main engines just blew themselves off, and the whole thing came crashing down to the planet. Which was a sight to see, honestly. And Aaron actually did get another chance since he had a malfunction. He removed his pistons and went on and retrieved the rover really without any issue. It should be said once he got back up, he made it through the opening of the mothership all fine and dandy-like, but he didn't turn back on the artificial masses, so Scott had to go ahead and turn them on, and, well, when he did, that happened. Which I deemed still counted against Aaron, since it was his fault that the gravity cubes weren't already on.
Fury Sage.
He was probably also pretty pissed that he lost the wheel because it put him on par with Scott, since, well, I didn't say it earlier, but Scott did succeed. But in doing so, he had to basically bastardize the platform I'd built to spawn in rovers on, and clamp the ship around it, and I believe he lost a wheel in the process. He got his ship back up there, and even got it out from under the ship once he was up there, so the maintenance crew, in theory, that would be on the station could work on it, but, all in all, quite the faff. And then it became my turn, which, this is where I actually get to introduce the Medusa, unlike I really did in our previous recording session, because I figured I'd have all the footage of me actually building the thing, which turned out to be some slogfest footage, as well as being a bit desyncy and all that nonsense. Well, this is the Medusa. It's named the Medusa because, well, look at the bloody thing. It's a mess. Here, let me switch over to my character, honestly. Actually, that's being a bit silly. Oh, right. I think now you have to actually turn on the special spaceman building tools to even be able to build in creative mode now. Actually, we might be in survival now, I think about it. Yeah, look, my hydrogen stuff is depleting. Derpy Landy. There we go. That's why I couldn't copy and paste. But, as I was saying, this here is the Medusa. It's a pretty beast, ain't it? Not really. It's very odd. But the Medusa is named because of its very odd design. The fact that it's got all these pieces shooting out in every direction. And after our previous attempt at landers, I kind of panicked and decided I was going to go overboard on thrusters. And that's exactly what I did. Turns out I had more than enough power. Yeah, as you can see, I had 13 thrusters on one side, as well as a bunch of ion thrusters, which, if you don't know, when the atmosphere is thin enough, those ion thrusters will output some power. So, the atmospheric thrusters get you going up, 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 And once the atmosphere starts thinning, the ion thrusters start doing all the work, and so it sort of shifts off without you ever having to really do anything. Pretty nifty, and it worked great, actually. What else do we have besides 1,000,001 thrusters that are all on these very, very strange and confusing to look at struts? Well, we got all of our reactor stuff in here. I believe we got 4, 8, 9, 10 reactors stuck in there, all with uranium in them, a cargo container there with a connector port, and of course little tiny pipes in between connecting them all together. If we were to fly down here, we'll be able to look up and you'll see that we have another connector here. And I actually measured this out so that if you were standing on the surface of the planet, you could theoretically jump and should be able to reach it. Right now it doesn't seem like it's wanting to highlight, rather unfortunately. I did measure it out so you'd definitely be able to get to the cockpit. There we go, yeah. So there's where the cockpit actually is. It's stuck down on the bottom of the ship. That way, once you're on the ground, if you don't have hydrogen fuel, you would still jump up and hop into that. And it's also positioned there so that when you're inside of the cockpit, of course, there was a horse, you could be able to look around inside the cockpit and actually see the payload you're picking up. And this brings us to the next point, the controls. So we can actually lower down some landing gears, and these go down pretty damn far. So you can theoretically pick up pretty much anything. And of course, press number 2 to lock them. Well, small spot of bother as per usual when it comes to pistons or landing gears. The second I'd lock any of these, well, the landing gears decided to separate themselves from the pistons. Not exactly an ideal day. Actually, it was more like the pistons decided to separate themselves from the pistons. The little tiny piston head popped off the rest of it. Some theory was that it was too heavy. I don't know. I've never really seen a weight thing said anywhere, but that's what happened. Very annoying, to say the least, though. We ended up actually going ahead and, well, with Scott killing me by placing a block, we ended up going ahead and setting our ship up to, well, I say setting the ship up to just pick up the rover with just a standard landing gear, no special hoopas. Once we did that, we flew it back up here to the planet. It took a little while, but the thrusters were exactly as suspected. Guys had a little bit of worry, I think, but whatever. The point is, it got back up here, and I went to drop it off with the most successful run of anybody, and my ship completely ready to go again. Unlike the others who needed to refuel hydrogen and all that nonsense, and maybe do repairs after Scott's terrible attempts at landing, which actually, honestly, he had to make a special landing pad just to be able to pick up the rover because his landing gears wouldn't reach. Anyway, I got up here all ready to drop it off. It was super duper successful, only being held back by pistons deciding to derp out. Maybe similar to Aaron in that way, but then my ship decided it wanted to crack in half like a magic egg. Fantastic. Anyways, that is a faster look at our last week's lander, or last week's build-off, than it would have been if I actually edited through it and did it. Well, the footage is so funky, and in the middle of Scott's landing, Shadowplay just decided, and threw a turret at me and just stopped recording and working, and I had screen tearing and all sorts of nonsense, so yeah. Anyways, that is that. Thank you a bunch for watching. I don't know if this world will be up on the Steam Workshop. If you get enough people that say, "Hi, Site, I want the world," maybe I'll delete all of our ships and just give you guys the world. Probably would, actually. Yeah, so if you want it, just give me a heads up and check the description if there's a workshop link there. Enough people have asked already, and I've actually gone ahead and put it up. Anyways, that is that. That's a Medusa. She flew pretty well. She did her job. She did blow up at the end, but whatever. Everything's piped up too. Blah, 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 blah. She'll probably be on the workshop too, actually, if people want her. Anyways, that is that. Thanks so much for watching, guys and gals, and I shall see you next time. Auf Wiedersehen, ta-ta, goodbye, have a nice day, drink lots of liquids, don't get sick. What? I don't know.